Alright everyone, so Elbaf is just getting more and more interesting. My favorite two parts of this chapter were us getting some more insight into the Gods Knight's abilities and personalities, as well as finally getting confirmation that Loki is very likely not a big bad guy and not the main antagonist of Elbaf. That is something that we, generally the One Piece reader community, had believed for some time, that Loki, there was likely something more to him. But this chapter all but confirms that yes, we're supposed to view him as a somewhat sympathetic character, and there's more going on underneath the surface, as well as more to the murder of his father Harold. But we're gonna get towards that towards the end. First I want to talk about the Gods Knights. So, the Gods Knights are, at least Sommers is, one of the most nasty characters that we've ever met, and that fits in the sense that these are the Celestial Dragons, right? So we're expecting characters that have the same sort of mentality as the Gorosei, where everyone else are just insects, and they're just playthings in their big game, and the Celestial Dragons can do whatever they want to them. I think that symbolically what Oda's having the Celestial Dragons do right off the bat, turn the nation of Elbaf into one big game for their own entertainment, that is representative of how Oda wants us to perceive the Celestial Dragons as villains. I also like that in general, anytime we're meeting a new sort of major villain group, Oda thinks of ways to quickly communicate to the reader what is the essence of the nature of this villain group, how are they distinct from other villain groups. So for example, with CP9, the first time that CP9 is being unveiled to us, it's through the revelation of this big, mysterious, undercover assassination plot. Like, CP9 are the silent killers of the world government. With the Big Mom Pirates, our first encounter with the Big Mom Pirates is showing us how the Big Mom Pirates operate, with the Big Mom Pirates basically threatening the fisherman people that, hey, if you don't deliver the goods, the sweets, then we are going to punish your island. That's reflective of the fact that Big Mom in general, she's a very quid pro quo type character, where she makes a lot of sort of lopsided alliances where you have to work with her or else. And similarly with the Beast Pirates, our first introduction to them was in Zou, where we are shown pretty much what the Beast Pirates are like. They're a very violent, destructive force that will just tear through a land and just ravage it. It is led by calamities, who are kind of like these destructive forces of nature. And finally, with the Gods Knights, once again with their introduction, we're getting a scene that kind of encapsulates what they are about. They view themselves as above all other races, and therefore they're turning the entire nation of Elbaf into their playthings. They're creating a game out of the lives of the Elbaf children. And most notably, they're doing so sort of from a lofty standpoint where they're way above everybody else. So we kind of see them just getting to kick back, relax, have a luxurious meal while chaos is raining down below them as everyone panics from the damage that these gods are inflicting on all the giants of Elbaf. I think this whole scenario just perfectly encapsulates and represents how Oda wants us to perceive the Gods Knights and what really makes their brand of evil unique among all the villain groups that we've seen. Now, in terms of their abilities, Sommers and Killingham's abilities stand out to me because they are examples of Devil Fruits that really are a combination of two separate abilities that Oda's wrapping up into one bundle. I think a notable example of that we all can recall is Sugar's Devil Fruit, where on the one hand, it's a devil fruit that turns people into toys, but on the other hand, it's also a devil fruit that makes people forget your existence. And Oda kind of just combined these two concepts into one fruit and basically said, she will turn you into a toy, and also turning you into a toy makes everybody else forget your existence. So it's really two pretty distinct abilities that Oda is marketing or packaging as really one devil fruit ability. And so again, I feel like Sommers and Killingham, they're kind of that similar variety. Sommers' fruit, it's really two separate fruits, right? Being a thorn man, being able to create thorns, that's an ability in and of itself. It's almost like a Logia ability in terms of Green Bull being able to blend with nature, create wood, trees, things like that to manipulate. But then Sommers also has this ability that's related to love, wherein the more a character loves the target of Sommers' ability, the more pain Sommers' ability can inflict. So that's really two separate concepts that Oda's merging into one devil fruit and basically packaging it under the idea of every rose has its thorns, love is painful, that's sort of a poetic concept, but in actuality, the two abilities are pretty separate that are being melded together. But that just speaks to the fact that it is a pretty powerful and versatile fruit, much like Sugar's. And Killingham's is a lot like that, but just even more of an impressive packaging of abilities, because on its own, the ability to bring people's imaginations to life, that is a crazy devil fruit ability, especially considering that these imaginations still actually carry a lot of power. It's not as though it's illusions that are being brought to life. He is genuinely able to manifest an army of gigantic creatures that make even the giants themselves look like tiny ants. That is absolutely insane in terms of power, because as we know, throughout the One Piece world, it has generally been a very long-coveted scientific discovery of being able to create an army of giants. Like, everyone from the world government to the big mom pirates, everybody wants to be able to create giants themselves because giants are so valuable. Even the numbers are among Kaido's most valuable foot soldiers. Killingham's ability can basically create an army of gigantic creatures that are way bigger than any of the giants, and at pretty much zero cost or effort to him. Like, it cannot be understated enough how ridiculously broken this ability is. What he is doing right now is like the equivalent of decades of research for Vegapunk with billions of world government berries being poured into the lab. He can essentially, at a whim, create the strongest army in One Piece. That cannot be understated heading into the Final War. That is just so absurdly valuable heading into the Final War, although I would not be surprised if Killingham is defeated before we get to that point. Although that is a topic for another video. So on the one hand, he can bring people's imaginations to life, but then at the same time, he can also just put people to sleep. That is its own separate ability. Being able to control sleep or put people to sleep, that should in theory be its own Devil Fruit ability. Being able to bring imaginations to life, that's its own ability. Oda's combining them two and just packaging it under the concept of, well, it's the Dream Fruit, so it can just do a lot of things. So Oda's being a little sneaky here, where he is introducing two characters with extremely powerful abilities that really are kind of combo abilities in themselves, and he's just using them to terrorize the Giants of Elbaf, because we're really dealing with almost like 5 separate Devil Fruit abilities here. Like Gunko's ability, Killingham's ability to put people to sleep, Killingham's ability to bring people to life, Somers' ability to restrain people with thorns, and Somers' ability to kind of make characters untouchable thanks to the love barrier. They assembled the ideal squad of God's Knights to basically f*** up Elbaf. And the power of their abilities is really reflected in the fact that they can just sit back and watch it all play out with no real risk involved for them. And that is kind of a recurring theme of the God's Knights so far, which is that, in that reflective of the fact that they are gods, they are celestial dragons, their abilities will often do the work for them, right? So it's not just Killingham and Somers and Gunko. Shamrock's first attack in the story wasn't even his own attack, he just let his sword do his bidding for him while Shamrock himself flew away. So I like this sort of consistent theme of the celestial dragons. Like, they are the God's Knights, they are the warriors of the celestial dragons, but they still reflect the celestial dragons' attitude and general philosophy of like, a lot of this, direct work is beneath us, so we will just allow our abilities to do the work for us as much as possible, rather than get our hands dirty if we don't want to. So I just love the way that Oda is presenting the God's Knights so far. Somers in particular seems like the nastiest of the group up till this point, and I do think, again, a Sanji versus Somers matchup is in the works, just based on the way that their abilities likely match up, Fire versus, Thorns, and also just Sanji's passion, his emphasis on love, Somers' emphasis on love. I could definitely imagine a scenario where Sanji just breaks through Somers' thorns to get to somebody that he loves. I definitely think that that is a matchup on the horizon. But first, this month we have some of the most legendary islands in One Piece for you. You can get God Valley, Marijua, Laugh-Tale, and Impel Down. The posters are printed on matte paper, hand cut by the artist himself. Each of these posters can be purchased individually, or you can get all 4 of them together for 50% off. You can also still get the premium package if you want to appear on my streams, and in that case, you can also choose any poster from 2024 as well. So if you want God Valley, Marijua, Laugh-Tale, and Impel Down for your walls, just hit the link in the description below. All posters from 2024 will also be available in the complete original set bundle. But swing away from the God's Knights focus, let's talk about Loki. So, this chapter was basically the chapter that kind of confirmed, alright, Loki, not that bad of a dude. He wasn't even really trying to destroy Elbaf last chapter, it looked like. It seems as though he was doing a warning shot just to really force their hand to free him from the cuffs to get away. And it almost worked. In reality, Loki was nowhere near ready to cause that much damage or chaos, he was just too weak at this point in time. So Loki was bluffing. I love the fact that Luffy is being empathetic to Loki, because Luffy has always been the best judge of character in the entire story. He sees the world through pure eyes, and so the fact that he is being sympathetic to Loki, and he is basically saying, like, this guy, don't want to actually hurt him that bad, don't want to do anything that bad to him, let's just let him rest and recover. I think that fact alone basically solidifies that Loki likely isn't that bad of a character. And this is already considering that Loki was out and out messing with Luffy by the end of their first conversation, he was grinding Luffy's gears, and Loki outright tricked Luffy when Luffy returned. Despite all that, Luffy still doesn't feel right harming Loki. So there is a lot more to this character, and I can't wait to see Loki and Luffy's interactions once Luffy gets to kind of know the real Loki and where that leads. We also seem to get some confirmation this chapter chapter that Loki and Harold, there definitely was more to that story, and Loki is not just a cold-blooded murderer. That's what it seems like at this moment in time. We do get the sense that Loki was a bit of an asshole growing up, considering that he bullied Hadrudin, but at the same time, it also seems to be being suggested that Loki isn't outright evil, so he's somewhere in the middle of that spectrum. I think this is all setting up Loki to be one of the most tragic and complex characters in One Piece, and maybe one of the best anti-hero characters that we've ever had. So I'm extremely excited to find out the truth about Loki. He's shaping up to be one of my favorite and most fascinating side characters in the entire story, and that's saying a lot considering how many phenomenal side characters One Piece has had. But I would honestly say that at least in Elbaf so far, which is an arc that has already given us so many fun different setups, I still think Loki is my favorite point of focus in this arc, and the more that we can get of Loki, the happier that I'll be. Although if next chapter we continue with some of the chaos of the God's Knights above, that would be really, really cool to see as well. And finally, we have two really good points from the Voice of the People, my top tier of patrons. So first, Dice said that the whole months to heal for Loki's wounds is either hinting that he's not dying, or an excuse is being set for him to die to Blackbeard and have his fruit stolen. So as you guys may recall, I've done a video in the past breaking down why I do believe that Loki does have a very powerful sun god related fruit that I think that Blackbeard is ultimately going to steal. I think that that is the direction that Loki's character is very possibly heading. The months to heal thing is just fascinating, because in One Piece, characters never take months to heal. It does not matter how badly damaged a character is, how close to death's door they get, no matter what, as long as they survive, they're basically back to full health within a couple weeks. So Oda establishing that it's going to take Loki months to get back to full health, that's a plot choice. That's an exception that Oda's kind of making. He's sort of bending the logic of the One Piece world to make an exception because he does not want Loki at full strength for whatever reason for some time. Either we're being set up for some character to actually heal Loki a lot faster, maybe some chopper shenanigans or something like that, or Loki really is not supposed to ever get back to full strength over the course of this arc. We're only going to see his full strength in flashbacks, simply because Loki does need to lose in some way over the course of this arc. And if Loki is supposed to lose, Oda doesn't want to disrespect the character, so he's going to have him lose in a way that he's not necessarily at full strength. So I think that might be the direction that we're going. I think that if we get Loki in a full-on battle over the course of this arc, which I do think that we will get, I do think we'll get a full display of his abilities, he will still have a built-in excuse for not being at full strength and ultimately going down to maybe like Shamrock, who Loki wants to fight, or Blackbeard if Blackbeard does come in and take Loki's fruit at the end of the arc. I do think Oda might just be setting up Loki so that he's not going to be at full strength, but he's still going to be impressive for the rest of the arc. Now beyond that, Dammits Dan said that with Loki wielding the Kanabo as a child and Harold looking so much like Kaido, it's possible that Kaido may have been a child of Harold, or perhaps Oni are also descendants from ancient giants. I do agree that Oni in general are likely descendants of ancient giants, so we don't know how much those genes sort of overlap, so maybe a lot of Oni kind of look similar, so just because Kaido looks a certain way like Harold, that doesn't necessarily mean that that's Kaido's dad, but I think it would be a really cool story development if we do learn that that is where Kaido came from, and I think things would line up. I think the fact that Loki and Kaido are brothers, that would just be a really just fun addition to the story, because even their introductions kind of line up. People were talking about how Loki's introduction felt a lot like Kaido's introduction, and it would just give us some more backstory and context on Kaido. So I like that idea a lot. I don't really think it's important if we ever learn who Kaido's father is or not, but if it does end up being Harold, maybe that's just some more interesting information that we get out of Harold's backstory and adds a little bit of an extra sense of interconnectedness of the One Piece world. So I love this chapter. I'm really looking forward to next chapter and getting more of Loki and the God's Knights. And with that, I will talk to you all later.